So let's go back to the very beginnings of discernment. For our ancestors, who were part of polytheistic cultures, the question very often was not, where is God? People knew where the gods were. The gods were up on the mountain, or in the trees, or in the rivers. More often, the question was more like, what's going to happen to us? Or, what do the gods want us to do? To answer these inquiries, our ancestors usually turned to some form of divination. In African cultures, they cast cowrie shells, and the way the shells landed gave some indication of what the orishas, what the gods, wanted people to do. In Celtic cultures, they used to spread out sand at night, and then in the morning, look at the tracks left by the foxes to give them some idea of what the gods were trying to tell them. In other cultures, they looked for patterns in the entrails of animals. And yes, even ancient Israel practiced a form of divination. If you look at the PDF that I've provided, with the scriptures from Leviticus and Jonah and so on, you'll see what I mean. When you see the words Urim and Thummim, these are basically a pair of dice that used to live in the breastplate of the high priest. And when they wanted to know what God's will was, they popped them out and gave him a roll. No kidding. These days, even though we may secretly read the horoscopes in the newspaper, we don't tell anybody about it. Most of us feel a little awkward about using divination. However, some Christians do use bibliomancy. That's a pretty fancy word for just flipping through the Bible at random, pointing your finger, and taking whatever passage results as some indication or some message from God. But in general, Christian churches tend to frown on the practice of divination in pretty much any form. I wonder, is that fair, though? I'll leave you to make up your own mind about this, because, in fact, it is biblical. And whether you think that it's a message from God, or just synchronicity, or whether it's an opportunity for us to make creative connections, well, it's an open question. I would, however, like to assign you a form of divination to try this week as your spiritual practice. I'd like you to practice earworm-mancy. It's a word I made up, so if you're not familiar, don't be surprised. An earworm, as you might know, is that annoying tune that you wake up singing that you just can't get rid of. Usually it's a really bad song, and not one that you would pick to have playing through your mind all day long. So I'm going to ask you to pay attention to those annoying songs, and specifically to the lines, the lyrics of those annoying songs that keep replaying in your head. What are those lines saying? More specifically, what are those lines saying to you?